so-called flying saucers.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. It's rotating.
We don't yet know exactly what these three objects were, but nothing right now suggests they were related to China's spy balloon program or that they were surveillance vehicles from any other country.
As simple as an overreaction to an underreaction. So we know that the first object was a spy balloon. It was 200 feet high. It had a payload bay and a surveillance bay. We've been told the numbers 2, 3, and 4 have none of those things and are maybe as little as 1/10 of the size, not maneuverable, drifting with the wind. So
this is not just an issue for the United States, but one for the rest of the world. And as I said, our friends and our partners are dealing with this as well. We worked on a bipartisan basis to stand up an office at the Pentagon to study this in partnership with the intelligence community, academic institutions, and the private sector. These unidentified aerial phenomena have been reported for many years without explanation or deep examination by the government.
Welcome to Kill the Stigma. Today we're going to talk about that one time we almost had disclosure. This is a forgotten story. I kind of wish there was more interest, not just of the public, but like of the community, the UFO community, because I thought it was huge. So, here you go. So, a journalist got information that they shot another object down on February 10th, 2023, and while John Kirby's doing a White House press briefing, she called him out and she'd asked about it, and John Kirby had to say the truth. And he gets very nervous. This is how it all started, guys.
So can we just go back for a moment? So another aircraft of some sort, airship, balloon, something was shot down today. Who owns it? What were the circumstances? Was the president directly involved in ordering this? And is wreckage being recovered?
Well, okay, so I'm going to try. Remind me if I forget something.
Okay.
Yes, the president absolutely was involved in this decision. He ordered it at the recommendation of Pentagon leaders. He wanted it taken down, and they did that. They did it using fighter aircraft assigned to U.S. Northern Command. The Pentagon will have more to say about the details of this later on this afternoon. It's only just within the last hour. We're calling this an object because that's the best description we have right now. We do not know who owns it, whether it's state-owned or corporate-owned or privately owned. We just don't know. We don't know. As I said, state-owned. We don't know if it's state-owned, and we don't understand the full purpose. We don't have any information that would confirm a stated purpose for this object. We do expect to be able to recover the debris since it fell not only within our territorial space, but on what we believe is frozen water. So a recovery effort will be made, and we're hopeful that it'll be successful, and then we can learn a little bit more about it.
Was its appearance like the Chinese aircraft?
No, it was much smaller than the spy balloon that we took down last Saturday. The way it was described to me was roughly the size of a small car, as opposed to a payload that was like 2 or 3 buses size, right? So much smaller, and not of the same, no significant payload, if you will.
And lastly, is it now the policy of the United States that if unidentified aircraft are over U.S. territory, that it is likely the president will choose to shoot it down?
The president will always act in the best interest of our national security and in the safety and security of the American people.
The U.S. military pilots who approached the craft have given conflicting accounts of what they saw. This new reporting coming in now from CNN national security reporter Natasha Bertrand. Natasha, so this is interesting. This is kind of unusual that these pilots saw different things, and that is sort of, I guess, adding to the mystery of all this.
Yeah, not even the pilots apparently were really able to identify what they saw. And just to take you back for a sec, on Thursday, the U.S. defense officials sent F-35 fighter jets up to try to figure out what this object was that was flying around near Alaska. Those pilots, we have learned, have given very conflicting accounts of what they actually experienced, with some pilots saying that the object interfered with the plane's sensors, other pilots saying that they didn't really experience that, other pilots saying that when they looked at the object, they could identify no identifiable propulsion system, and they did not know how it was actually staying in the air, cruising at that altitude of about 40,000 feet. So this has all added to the Pentagon's wariness of describing in more detail what this object actually is until they can get more information through the debris that they are recovering right now.
And what do we know about the efforts to recover the wreckage of this second object? It looks like NORAD just put out an email a short time ago, and it sounds like they're trying to recover it.
They did, and what we were told yesterday is that the object was shot down over frozen water, so it landed on the ice, essentially. We don't know what kind of condition it's in, whether it is intact, for example, but recovery efforts have been launched, and according to the Defense Department, they have been able to recover a significant amount of debris. Now, notably, they still don't know what this object is, where it came from, or even what direction it was headed in, or what direction it came from. It is just all very murky at this point, but they do say that the FBI is going to be taking the lead on analyzing the debris. If that sounds familiar, it's because just last week we saw that another Chinese spy balloon, I should say a Chinese spy balloon, because we don't know what this one actually is,
right,
was shot down, also being analyzed by the FBI. But right now, there are just so many more questions than answers, Jim.
So in the Alaska shootdowns, pilots were confused to what they saw. They didn't know. They reported different things. There was jamming from this object when they were about to shoot it down, apparently. And we have no information. What happened was a Chinese balloon gets shot down, then 3 objects get shot down. In none of these cases, allegedly, we were not able to retrieve these objects. The Chinese balloon, totally transparent. It was super embarrassing, but they were transparent about us. They showed us them shooting down the missile over North Carolina. With these 3, we got nothing for national security reasons. On all 3 times, they're like, we cannot retrieve this due to weather, blah, 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 super sketchy, super shady about it. Everything was super shady about it. So the reason I'm talking about this is because I remember the pressure, right? All the questions, the people were going insane. And that resulted in the Disclosure Act and Chuck Schumer and a lot of politicians getting behind it, but it kind of died off. Now, do we trust the executive branch with all this and the White House and all this? No. Is it important to analyze what they are saying and try to get to the bottom of it? Hopefully journalists, sources, people, get to the bottom of it. Yes, that is very important. So we're gonna take a look at the reaction and the speech of the staffers who speak for the White House. The Admiral, John Kirby, President Biden afterwards faced the public and he ran off. He took days to address this situation. And when he did, he just left the podium. Not sus. We did not find the debris 3 times. I already said this. So what the heck happened? Here's a speech from the Admiral, and then I'm gonna show you what the senators were saying.
The President also instructed the intelligence community to take a broad look at the phenomenon of unidentified aerial objects. Indeed, President Biden conducted the first ever daily intelligence briefing session devoted to this phenomenon back in June of 2021. He was briefed that this is not just an issue for the United States, but one for the rest of the world. And as I said, our friends and our partners are dealing with this as well. We worked on a bipartisan basis to stand up an office at the Pentagon to study this in partnership with the intelligence community, academic institutions, and the private sector. These unidentified aerial phenomena have been reported for many years, without explanation or deep examination by the government. President Biden has changed all that. We are finally trying to understand them better. Now, in light of the Chinese balloon program and this recent incursion into our airspace, the United States and Canada, through NORAD, have been more closely scrutinizing that airspace, including enhancing our radar capabilities, which, as the commander of NORTHCOM and NORAD, General Van Herk, said just last night, may at least partially explain the increase in the objects that have been detected. Slow-moving objects at high altitude with a small radar cross-section are difficult to detect on radar. Even objects the size of the Chinese spy balloon, which had a payload the size of roughly 3 school buses, were not picked up by previous administrations or other countries. We also know that a range of entities, including countries, companies, research, and academic organizations, operate objects at these altitudes for purposes that are not nefarious at all, including scientific research. That said, because we have not yet been able to definitively assess what these most recent objects are, we acted out of an abundance of caution to protect the security, our interest, and flight safety. In Saturday's case, we acted in consultation with the Canadian government, the President speaking personally with Prime Minister Trudeau. The spy balloon was, of course, different because we knew precisely where that was. As we have said, we do not assess that these most recent objects posed any direct threat to people on the ground, and we are laser focused on confirming their nature and purpose, including through intensive efforts to collect debris in the remote locations where they have fallen. In each instance, we have followed the same basic course. We assessed whether they posed any kinetic threat to people on the ground. They did not. We assessed whether they were sending any communication signals. We detected none. We looked to see whether they were maneuvering or had any propulsion capabilities. We saw no signs of that. And we made sure to determine whether or not they were manned. They were not. We did, however, assess that their altitudes were considerably lower than the Chinese high-altitude balloon and did pose a threat to civilian commercial air traffic.
That was Admiral John Kirby. And he was the speaker for the White House, one of the speakers of the White House. And, you know, I don't know, to me that was big, right? But, rightfully so, the community, even the people who follow the topic, were very skeptical because they're like, well, why is the government now telling us anything? Why should we trust them? Rightfully so, and it was very puzzling. Indeed, unless it is true that we adjusted our radars and then we started picking all these things up and we started shooting these things down, or something else is missing. Something else could be missing. Can somebody please ask Ross Coulthart this? If people he knows were involved with the UAP 2023 shootdowns, people like David Grush, okay? People like that, right? I will try to do that as well. But let's ask him about that, because I remember him saying something along those lines and I can't find that data. Like I'm trying to figure out where he said it. So anyways, it was interesting that we had the February shootdowns, then David Grush comes out, then the Senator Chuck Schumer writes this UAP Disclosure Act, which if you read that, it seems like disclosure. I mean, we're talking about technology of unknown, a plan for disclosure to the public, eminent domain, a panel of 9 people to evaluate what should be released to the public. They do mention non-human intelligence like a lot in that document. And this is legislation from the Chuck Schumer, senator most powerful in the time, he was Senate majority, okay? So this event started causing these other events, and then it kind of died off. So what the heck happened here? Okay, so like one of the shoot downs did leak. Okay, so like these pilots in Michigan were shooting this object that had tentacles under it almost. Was it a jellyfish? I don't know, it's weird, we have no information. The only one that they released a picture of was the Canadian government, and it's strange, and I'll show you that at some, like in the end of the video or later. But these one in Lake Huron, look what the pilots said. They were super confused, just like in Alaska.
New audio from inside the F-16 fighter jets tasked with shooting down a suspected balloon over Lake Huron earlier this month. The audio put up online, authenticated by the Air Force for Local 4. The pilots still searching for the exact location of the object. With a cruising speed of nearly 600 miles an hour, the object is so small from inside the cockpit, it's hard to see.
The only thing is just the size of it. It's just so slow and so small and you can't see it until you're so close. I'd honestly be worried about hitting it before even knowing it was there.
And then they find it.
Just some kind of dark object. You can see some strings or something hanging down below it. Can't tell if it's holding anything. It's like a octagonal shape. I'm going to call it a balloon. You can definitely see strings hanging down below, but I don't see anything below it. It's pretty small. I don't know, size of like a four-wheeler or something.
The pilots have to make several runs, but eventually shoot it down.
Hit.
The hit came on the second Sidewinder missile fired. The first one, according to the Pentagon, missed the balloon. The heat-seeking supersonic high-explosive missiles cost the Air Force about $470,000 each time they're fired. The search for the wreckage eventually called off after Canadian search crews came up empty-handed.
So they said strings. Sorry for saying jellyfish. The pilots are saying it looks like strings under it. Octagonal shape. What kind of balloon is that? Size of a car. We keep hearing this with the mystery drones. Drones of a car, size of a car. And that's, the mystery drones is another almost high disclosure episode, which I've talked about a lot, and I'll do one more detail at some point, but we keep hearing that. Size of a small car, pilots confused, descriptions are different, right? The first one in Alaska was like a cylinder for the little information that we have. And pilots were conflicted reports. The one in Canada, there is a picture and it's like, looks like a C, right? Like a Z, but the other way, like it's upside down, I guess, or opposite side of a Z. And then the one in Lake Huron, we got an octagonal shape with strings under, and the pilots are confused, and we can hear these pilots. Only for the Lake Huron one, we can hear them. The other one in Alaska and Canada, I guess they did talk to journalists at first, and then it's gone, like nothing. We didn't get anything leaked, like the Lake Huron one. So I would love to see those pilots go on record one day. At least one or two at least. We need two at least. You need multiple sources, man, for this stuff. Now, I hope that happens before. Well, actually, I hope it happens very soon. But, you know, I don't know what the realistic goal for that is. Now, I will throw another speculation in there. This kind of bothers me because Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon, I'm a big fan of, but I feel like they sometimes play both sides. And they've said balloons in Balloongate, right? And they say balloons in plural. And I never got confirmation that these ones were balloons, except I've heard them say it. Now, hypothetically speaking, if you were involved with this incident, you would not want more attention to it publicly because you're working, you're doing an investigation, right, for the government. You don't want that attention out there. You just don't. So sometimes I do wonder if Elizondo and Mellon were involved. And that's why they haven't tried to draw too much public attention to it. I mean, Mellon has, he's written articles on it, but why does Elizondo call them balloons? Like, I've heard them say, we had multiple balloons, multiple times I've heard them say that. Was it balloons? Because it sounded like something else. It could have been balloons, but I've never saw that confirmation. What I got more was the secrecy around this, the sketchiness, like no information. It sounded a lot like a UAP, or maybe I am biased. But I want to know what you guys think. Screw what I think. I want to know what you guys think, because it could be that they were involved, right? Elizondo and Mellon, and still are with the government dealing with this, pushing transparency, but whatever they were dealing with, right? Especially they were involved directly, whether it's investigating afterwards or during, that they would not want any attention to it because that's sensitive. And yeah. All right. Were they involved? Let's see. That picture I found, it was taken right after that whole fiasco. Of course, but that makes sense. Like, you call the experts, right? And these guys, they're the ones at least that are public, right? That have been dealing with this. So that also makes sense. But like I said, I know Russ Colhart said that David Grush was kind of involved. And I remember David Grush did say in the hearings that he doesn't know why they haven't declassified this. So I'm speculating. I'm not accusing Elizondo of anything. I'm just saying I don't think these things were balloons at all. Okay. Now, what did the senators, what did the people that support this topic also say, right? Like, I want to know. Let's find out.
U.S. senators say 3 of the 4 flying objects recently shot down by the U.S. remain unidentified.
They are lost. They can't find them. The remnants are in very difficult terrain.
Both Republican and Democratic senators received a classified briefing about the objects and say they learned the phenomenon isn't new.
These objects have been flying over us for years. We've known about those objects for many years.
Senator Marco Rubio says what is new is the U.S. response.
That they were shot down, which is extraordinary because we've never shot down anything in 65 years of NORAD.
The Biden administration says it shot down the latest 3 objects faster than the first because they were in commercial airspace.
If you are going to function in commercial airspace, you have to have emitters, you have to have lights.
And New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand says those objects weren't following protocols. And they were different than the first, which the government says was a Chinese spy balloon.
It was very different in nature than the other 3 objects that were shot down, and it was different in how it moved.
Now, many Republicans want President Biden to personally brief the public on the unidentified flying objects. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
So, senators were briefed on this. One of them was like, lock your doors. The one from Louisiana. And others were just saying that the government needs to be more transparent. And that ranged from Democrats, and Republicans were obviously also like, oh, the Biden administration, because a lot of this is politics. But this topic of UAP, I believe it's beyond that. And it's actually bipartisan. The problem is, there's a bipartisan effort for transparency. There was also a bipartisan effort for cover up and forget this topic. So, with everything going on in the world, it's a little complicated, but this story is a huge story that's just right there. It's almost like, I believe, it's like an elephant in the room. And now journalists of mainstream media, compose yourself when you talk about mainstream media, right? Here's what the president has to say after avoiding the media for a very long time. I think it was over a week. There you go.
Our airspace, including enhancing our radar to pick up more slow-moving objects above our country, around the world. In doing so, they tracked 3 unidentified objects, one in Alaska, Canada, and over Lake Huron in the Midwest. They acted in accordance with established parameters for determining how to deal with unidentified aerial objects in U.S. airspace. At their recommendation, I gave the order to take down these 3 objects due to hazards to civilian commercial air traffic and because we could not rule out the surveillance risk of sensitive facilities. We acted in consultation with the Canadian government. I spoke personally with Prime Minister Trudeau from Canada on Saturday. And just as critically, we acted out of an abundance of caution and an opportunity that allowed us to take down these objects safely. Our military and the Canadian military are seeking to recover the debris so we can learn more about these 3 objects. Our intelligence community is still assessing all 3 incidences. They're reporting to me daily and will continue their urgent efforts to do so, and I will communicate that to the Congress. We don't yet know exactly what these 3 objects were, but nothing right now suggests they were related to China's spy balloon program or that they were surveillance vehicles from any other country.
Anyway, the president makes it clear that it's on China, but he's very not transparent about what the heck was going on. Obviously, like when it comes to these 3 objects, just total BS. And how does he end a conversation? Like this. He just leaves.
Thank you all. Now look, the other thing I want to point out is that we are going to keep our allies and the Congress contemporaneously informed of all we know and all we learn. And I expect to be speaking with President Xi, and I hope we're going to get to the bottom of this. But I make no apologies for taking down that balloon. Thank you very much.
Sir, the question was it? There's been criticism. There's been criticism that this wasn't. There's been criticism that this.
China compromised by your family's business relations.
Sir, Mr. President, there has been criticism.
Did you overreact?
Mr. President, there has been criticism that this was an overreaction that was done because of political pressure.
You come to my office and ask the question when you have more polite people.
Mr. President, why have you chosen Poland for your trip to mark anniversary of the war? And what's your message? What?
When are you speaking to President Xi, Mr. President?
An aggressive effort to put questions to the President of the United States. He thought about it, came back to the mics, then left.
Here's what John Radcliffe, former director of the ODNI, now director of the CIA, had to say about this back in 2023.
Can be captured and then transmitted back to the mothership in Beijing. They have control over these balloons. You know, this was an act of espionage in plain sight, plain view of the American people.
Now, that last point, this is espionage in plain sight. Is that the case?
Well, he's absolutely right. That's absolutely right about the first instance. That was a dedicated flight path over our most sensitive military sites, nuclear sites, critical infrastructure, you know, from end to end, a transcontinental voyage with respect to the Chinese spy balloon. But what you heard from the NORAD commander is with numbers 2, 3, and 4, they're not characterizing them as balloons. They're not characterizing them as Chinese. They're not characterizing them as even spy balloons. And they're saying that they're drifting slowly. They're not maneuverable. They have very different characteristics. So we simply don't know. But Bill, the point is this, is people are filling in the blanks and speculating because the Biden administration is not addressing this. They're not being transparent. They're not giving good explanations, you know, for what's going on here. And I think that that's a huge misstep and a disservice to the American people who shouldn't be having to speculate about this. Yeah. And our lawmakers should be getting apprised by the intelligence community and the military community.
I've got 30 seconds left here. I agree with everything you just said there. The weekend serves as a distraction for millions of Americans. So too does the game that was played here. It's Monday. Would you expect them to give us an explanation today in full?
Yes, absolutely. I think they, you know, think about it this way, Bill. With respect to the objects numbers 2, 3, and 4, if these were aircraft that went down that had potential survivors or passengers, they would be there. They would find a way to be there and to collect the information. So to say that, well, we haven't been able to recover everything or get to it, we don't have much information, is really just buying time to try and how to explain. They've got to give those explanations, and they've got to give them quickly. I think people they've run out of rope on this. But I think the thing to keep in mind is, at the end of the day, what we do know is that China is the threat that many of us have been saying for years. Don't lose sight of the first episode, which was a dedicated spy mission that was successful for China and a national security failure for the United States.
All right, let me conclude this episode for now. I will touch this at some point later on because I think it's a very important case. But questions for us. Why did the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office not deal with this? Easy. That's basically a public relations investigation. Then the UAP Interagency Office was something that we never heard of again, that apparently they made an effort classified to deal with this. I don't know what happened to that. We never heard of it again. I didn't mention this in this episode, but I will, I'll show you what I mean. General Pat Ryder and Admiral John Kirby did talk about that. No, we never heard anything else about that. Hopefully we will someday. There's not much information about that, but it's said it was supposed to remain classified. My concern is whether you're laying conspiracy cover-up. There is this fact where you're doing an investigation, you don't talk about your conclusions before time. Until you have a conclusion, you don't talk about it. So if it comes to national security, this is my concern about the timing of disclosure. Well, when will they have a conclusion? Do they already have one? Or is it like this super separate classified project or SAPs that's super sensitive due to multiple reasons? That's my concern. Anyway, I'll end up with this. What do you guys think? Do you guys think there was something to that February 2023? Am I in the wrong for thinking that it was like an underrated story by the community? I know that a lot of people in the community think that people, how do I say this? People don't want to be made to look stupid, so they're like almost skeptical because you don't want to look like such a believer. But I do think there's a lot of smoke here. What do you guys think? And here's the Canada picture of the UAP. Now, Canada admitted that they didn't release it because they knew that it would create more questions and they want to create confusion. They admitted it. So, here you go. So there's the object. I'm not an expert. Kind of looks like a horseshoe. Now, what's interesting is Canada admits that they didn't release this information because they didn't want to confuse people. They didn't want more questions and confusion and concern, and their government said that it's not a threat. They always say it's not a threat, but how do they know? How do they know it's not a threat if it's there and we don't know what it is? I don't know. To me, it's suspicious and sketchy, and we don't have enough information. So, yeah, of course you're going to say it's not a threat. You don't want to cause panic, but I'm skeptical. Thanks for listening. I was really pumped about this case because it was such a big deal. And I do think the UAP community did underrate it a lot. I think it was bigger in the news than the UAP community, but when I look at the details, I think it's interesting. Kind of like the mystery drones, we've been getting these cases where they almost break the news, man. They almost do, and we're gonna keep getting that. We didn't have that before. One day, we'll get some answers. One day, they won't be able to take the pressure. We've gotten so close. Let's keep at it, keep digging, keep fighting. Do not be dramatic. Love one another. Be patient. And try to not be toxic with each other in the community. And I'm not going to go on a sermon. Thank you.